Good to see you guys. Thanks for taking that online assessment. Sometimes those are a little bit spooky. You don't know why you're taking this test online, but just know we didn't measure anything psychotic about you. We just measured some behavioral things, your preferences. We measured a bunch of stuff about what you like, and that's what we're going to talk about today is you. And in a non-confrontational way, it's going to be really easy. You're going to draw some conclusions about other team members, maybe some coworkers, clients you like, and really understand other people and yourselves better so that you guys can be a sufficient team who leverages each other's assets, understands how to communicate with each other, and really is driven for like the same focus, even though we're all different people. Does that sound like fun?
Yeah.
I hope so. Here we go. Well, here are my goals for today. I hope that you guys understand your own style, start to understand the style of other people, and then learning how do I blend that so I get results out of other people? Because that's what business is trying to find out, how do I get things done? And it always takes other people. Many people have heard of the golden rule. It was in a popular book, not to take away from the author. I think that was in the Bible, right? Do unto others as you would have done unto you. And that makes a lot of sense. Treat other people nicely, the way you would want to be treated. A colleague of mine wrote a book called The Platinum Rule, based on some of this science. And he took the golden rule a little bit further to the platinum rule. And the platinum rule is treat other people the way they want to be treated. So instead of treating somebody the way you like to be treated, why don't you take a second, evaluate who they are, and talk to them in the way they like to be treated? It makes sense. And I think both rules can go, and we don't have to like dismiss the first author, right? So I want to talk about the how of communication. When we talk about the how of communication, it's how do we talk to people so that we get their fingers out of their ears long enough to get the message out. Because if I approach you in a way that you don't like, that's uncomfortable for you, well, then you're not going to want to listen to all the words that I have to say after that. So the how of behavior is about getting someone to listen. And we measure that with DISC. There's lots of different assessments out there, Myers-Briggs, Colby, they all measure cool things, but DISC measures how do people like to relate with other people. On this screen here, you see my DISC graph. You'll know what that means later on in totality, I think. You'll know how to approach me and talk with me and deal with someone like me. And you'll notice that nobody likes to be painted into a corner or labeled or put into a box. Right? Don't put me into a box because I have color, I have scores in all of these different areas. Some are high, some are low. Highs aren't good, lows aren't bad. It's a spectrum. But I'm not just a high I, right? I'm not just a low C. I'm a high I with a low C and a moderate D, and that means things. But in order for you to get this, we have to put people in boxes, okay? So let's go through what each of these mean kind of quickly. If you have your assessment in front of you, that's great. Look at your natural style. There's a natural style in your graphs. It's around page 20 to 25. But your natural style is who do I like to be if I get to show up and just be myself? How do I like to interact with the world? And the adapted style is more of kind of a snapshot of the last 3 to 6 months of how do I see myself having to be in order to deal with my life events? And that can change a couple times throughout the year, depending on your situations. So focus on your natural style because that's who you like to be. And when you're that person, you're at your best, okay? So the D, it's about being direct. It's about being dominant, right? I'm going to give you a P and a C word to hammer each of these home. And D's, it's about dealing with problems and challenges. Remember, I said highs aren't good and lows aren't bad. It's a spectrum. How direct do you prefer to be, or do you prefer to be more indirect and let others take the lead, non-confrontational? I'm going to give you some of the higher end traits of a high D, and then kind of tell you a little bit about lower D stuff. But mostly, if you can understand the high D and what that is, it will help you understand the rest of the stuff. So high Ds, they're results-oriented, they're task-oriented, they're assertive. Are you guys finished with that? Knock it off. Stop that. The price is too high. I don't like that. Yes, do that. Do it by 2. So if they think it, they say it. There's no filter, right? So if you're a very direct person, that's how you're going to come across. Here are some Ds that might be in the news. This is usually when high Ds are direct enough to say, hey, I don't like that picture of Kanye. Don't relate me to Kanye, right? So high Ds will be the one that tell you, knock that off. But these are people who are action-oriented, right? They're telling you what's going to happen. There's nothing hidden in their mind. Right? That's a good thing and a bad thing, right? All of these things can be overextended. Sometimes a high D is tough if they haven't bolted on skills. Let me pause to remind you, this is how we prefer to show up. If you prefer to be a high D, then you can be a high D. But D doesn't stand for jerk, right? It stands for direct. And I've met high Ds with a lot of diplomacy and tact and interpersonal skills that I love to get along with. And I've met high Ds with no diplomacy and tact, and boy, they're tough. They leave a wake of blood behind them, right? I added this for you guys because it's really something that's, I think, an eye-opener. If you've heard of EQ, it's emotional intelligence. And that is, how do we manage our own emotions, and how do we understand them and then moderate them? And then how do we understand the emotions of others and moderate them? But really, it's like a wisdom. It's like, am I doing this wisely, thinking of all the people involved? So I correlated what a high D would look like with high EQ and low EQ. Hope you like it. High Ds with high EQ, they're going to be assertive, ambitious, driving on the right side there, strong-willed, right? Decisive. I like those traits in a high D. When they have low EQ, you've met these people. They're aggressive and egotistical and bossy. You guys see that? You've seen it in other folks, right? Perfect. Because that was goal one, right? Understand your style and the style of others. But the D is not always about just being, rough. You can be direct and not be rough about it. Okay. So here's some things about Ds, just to kind of give you some background information. Their pace is fast and abrupt. They like to commandeer and take control. They want to win, right? They need results. They need those now. When they get under stress, they kind of become dictatorial. Knock it off. We're doing it my way. Under stress, it's like, I need to run this thing real hard. I need to really D. So I want to also tell you that you can make all the positive deposits in a relational bank account. I can treat you every way you like to be treated many, many times, but it only takes one or two big withdrawals to, go bankrupt in this relationship account. So you can do all these good things in the green and do the right things. But if you do any of the things that don't do, the fears, if you step on the fears of a person, it's a magic withdrawal. And Ds don't like losing. They don't like losing control of the situation. That's why they tell you what's going to happen to you, so that you don't tell them what's going to happen to them, right? So remember, do the positive things that Ds want. They want it fast. Mimic them. If you're a slower paced person, they like to hear the message quick, be brief, be bright, be gone, right? If you disagree, tell them quickly. They won't take as much affront to it. They like that tit for tat. So questions about the Ds. I'd like to open it up. See if you guys have questions about high Ds in general or even low Ds.
What are people, like in the world across all the spectrums evenly, or do you find certain people? Is there one of these four that are more frequently shown in these assessments?
Oh, that's great, Scott. So you'll have to forgive me. I have a lower C, so I don't remember the exact numbers, but I do remember that 58% of the population have S as their dominant trait. That means more than half. So when you're going out to identify other people, if you default to, I think they're an S, then you're going to be right more than half of the time. And then if they start, saying, hey, but this and that and this, then you can say, okay, maybe there's some D too, right? So there's some of that. You'll find that only 8% of Americans are Cs as their dominant trait. Amen, right? Because I've lived as a C most of my life, and it's very, detail-oriented and picky, sometimes fussy, analytical. Tell you more about it in a minute. But these are about the 16th percentile of Americans. Also, just to go further with your question, across cultures, since my assessment provider is worldwide, they've done these norms over many different types of cultures, and you'll find that Russians generally have higher Ds than Americans. That some of the Asian countries, especially Japan, has very low Ds. Bow, and they really allow others to take authority. So, a long answer. I hope thorough, but not too boring.
Cool.
Other questions? No, you guys are experts. Let's do this.
I actually have a question.
Go for it.
Like, for instance, I'm a high D, But I took this assessment like the first time, maybe about 12 years ago. My D right now is in the 90s, like 92, 93. I think probably when I first took it back in 2011 or so, I was probably in the 50s with my D. What can cause a change that dramatic?
Yeah, great question. They're all great questions. So if I forget to mention that your question's great, then, but Mike, that was a great question. So a couple things happen. DISC is usually formed in our teens. We kind of settle into how we want to show up as, like our style. Do I want to be an extrovert, fun loving, or do I want to be kind of like with my people or more detail? So we form those in our teens. And I don't see it change often. And we don't generally, as assessment nerds, we don't see it change often unless you have a significant life event. I had one. I told you that I grew up with a very high C and I had a significant life event. But it's typically when I meet with somebody who says that they've had some changes and we've looked at it, it's usually things like I went to war, I went to prison, I lost a child, rape. I mean, tough stuff, business collapse, a terrible divorce, just really stressful things that make somebody think about it, make somebody think about how they want to go about doing life differently than they always have.
Could a health event qualify?
Oh, for sure. Anything that challenges you, a lady who, I don't want to use something so graphic, but a lady who's raped, I don't know if her D is going to be higher or lower, but those are types of events that will change it. Is she going to be high and super vigilant when she pushes the cart to her car? I don't like you, stay away from me. High D, right? Or is she going to be low D? I'm going to use Instacart and I'm not going out, right? So I don't know how it's going to change, but boy, significant events, health events, that they can change it. Mike, do you feel like you went through some significant disruptions? Unmute.
Scott mentioned a health event, but my health event actually happened in 2009 when I took this assessment the first time. That was 2011. And so, as you're answering that question, I think part of me thinks that I think that my business started to grow, and I gained confidence in myself as a business owner, and felt like, because I think as my first, in 2011, I was about 6 years into the business at that point. And I probably had a little bit of like not feeling I was as good as I was. I like maybe feeling a little fraudulent, and maybe that's too strong of a word, but I grew up in the painting business, but I spent very little time actually in the field before I started the business. And so I kind of felt like I was faking it till I made it. Well, then I made it and I was growing. And I think once I kind of hit that point, I think that's where my D score started to go up.
Yeah. And that's not always the case. Yours went up because yours went up. As other people who might, study DISC or listen to a video like this or some trainings, they'll say, I have a low D. I wish it were higher. I have a high C. I wish it were lower. But typically what it takes to go and change that piece of you is a lot of stress. It's like grinding that diamond. And yours might have been business ownership. What I suspect happened, though, is if you felt like you were playing low or a little bit of an imposter syndrome, that's kind of typical for entrepreneurs. Don't feel too weird about it. There was somebody that you looked to you look to as someone, a high D will change that for me. And I emulate that. I want to become that. I want to do those behaviors in order to do that. And so, and that change happened with me. I wanted more I in my life because I had a very low I, and I just wanted to be a friendlier person, a more upbeat, optimistic person. And so there was a lot of, it's a hard change, because being a skeptical, I don't want to go to the wine and cheese event, to being somebody who enjoys going out to the wine and cheese event. That's significant. Also, I might say this, it happens from traumas, right? This is deeper into some other stuff I study, but there's big T traumas and little T traumas, and what's a big T trauma to you is a little T to somebody else. We can both watch the same car accident. One of us goes and meets therapy, and the other one's like, "Dang, that happens sometimes." Right? So for you, it made you move. Other people could do that, and it won't move. The most important thing to think about here is don't try to change your style. You don't want to have to go through the pain it takes to change your style. Bolt on skills. I'll show you some skills that you can bolt on to your preferred style later.
Sounds good.
All right. Other questions? Get on with it. Either way. All right. Eyes. The eyes, they're influential and they're fun-loving, right? They're optimistic. The P and C word is people in contacts. I want to get around people. They're enthusiastic, trusting, popular, outgoing. They're the megaphone of the company. Right? They want to talk. They're chatty. There's some high eyes in the news. What do they all have in common? Well, they're rich. Yeah. But no, they're smiling. Maybe they're smiling because they're rich. I think they're smiling because they're a high eye. Right? If you score above 80 on your eye score, you talk with your hands because it's exciting and I got to get people involved. So here's some high eye stuff with EQ. High eyes can be fun and engaging, right? If they have high EQ, warm, enthusiastic, charming, persuasive, but on low EQ, they don't realize what they're doing. They can be a poor listener, or they talk too much, or they don't know when to stop, or they're distractible, or it's shiny object and squirrels, right? So we've seen them both. Their pace is fast, impulsive, sometimes disordered. It's just exciting. Whatever's exciting right now. I'm kind of trying to change my energy for each one of these, and this energy is the energy of somebody who has a high eye, right? And they want to be liked. That's why I want to smile at you, is so you smile back. If I smile at you, maybe you'll like me. Here's an interesting thing about high eyes. If they're smiling at you and you're like a low eye, or they're talking with a higher C that doesn't like to smile as much, they turn up their eye. And it's a funny situation for me to see because, it's like, I didn't like you at this much eye, and you just ramped it up so I'd like you more. And I just like that even more. So it's a fun phenomenon to watch, But they need recognition. They just want to know that you like them. And under stress, they can become emotional. And I mean emotional in the way of like, it's chatty. It's like, ooh, we have a conflict. We got to talk this out. Sometimes it's disordered and kind of takes some rabbit trails. Under stress, it's like an emotional, let's talk it out. Because the eye is a people-related, extroverted trait. And they really just need that verbal confirmation that everything's good and we love each other. But they don't want to be rejected or embarrassed. They want to be liked and they don't want to be made fun of. I like calling high eyes out when I'm doing a presentation from the stage. If I know who's who, I like to call them out because they like the recognition, but I can't say anything negative about them because they would be super embarrassed and it would hit them harder than a high D, because a high D would be like, and you have booger hanging out of your nose. And the high I would be like, ooh, oh, that was very embarrassing. I know. I'm kind of silly is maybe how they'd play it off with a high I style. So don't reject them. No embarrassment. High eyes, they're fun loving, right? They're exciting, optimistic. Questions about our high I friends. Scott's a high I. How high is your eye, Scott?
I don't know off the top of my head, but we're going to find out soon, I think.
We will.
One thing I kind of thought of as you're going through here is when you, I was kind of in my head company culture and about the idea of belonging. So if these people are in your company, this idea of community probably or the recognition or the affirmation probably is really critical, where in the high D is probably not as critical, but if you have a lot of D's, you're probably going to have a different flavor. You're going to have a different vibe in your company. But this one, immediately I went into the 5 love languages or the affirmation in the workplace, whereas these people probably can be amazing employees, but if you don't handle them with their style, in line with their style, it could be probably difficult. And I bet you if you handle it properly, these people could be amazing teammates.
Totally. Energetic. I mean, you're talking about yourself, so I'm going to agree with you, Scott. Yes, you're an amazing teammate.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. And he likes it. You see, that's what high eyes want. I'm not pandering. I do like Scott, and I want to make him laugh because I'm a high I too.
Yeah.
But you're right. They can be amazing if you know how to handle them. But that's with all the styles. High Ds are amazing, right? On the low end of the I, just think of, it's not bad, but if you score lower in that I, it's more kind of hesitant, skeptical about people, right? I don't want to be effervescent and exuberant about my style. I'm just kind of cool and laid back, right? Moderately, if you score between 40 and 60, you're going to be warm without being engaging. Cool? S is like steadiness. I want you to think steady, like marching. It's just the same stride every day, steady and stable. They like a nice pace and consistency to their life. They don't like surprises. They like to know what's going to happen to them. They like predictability. This says loyal. All styles can be loyal, but you kind of think of this with the S's because they're always going to come through the same way. Kind of humble, non-expressive. But I like to think of S's like Mary at the front desk, who comes in at 8:00 every day and she eats her carrots at 10, and then she does her spreadsheets at 11, and she's out at 4:02. 4:02 people. That's Mary. That's what Mary does every day. That's S behavior. Right? It's hard to get Mary to change things because she likes sameness. It makes her feel comfortable. Change is spooky. Right? Here's some S's in the news. Right? Or maybe not in the news with Mr. Rogers, but his show was the same every time, wasn't it? He came in, he took off his shoes, he changed his sweater, he fed the fish, and then he took us out in the neighborhood and we saw Mr. Feely, who was definitely a high I, the mailman. Hey, this is going to be fun. But sameness is what S is like. Low S is like versatility. They say, I don't care how we did it yesterday. Let's just get it done. So you'll see a lot more urgency with lower S's. A little bit less follow through, a lot less nurturing through a process. S is about systematic and doing it the same all the time. There's some S with EQ. High EQ S's, they're patient and they're stable, predictable. I know what I'm going to get out of them every day. Good listeners. And with low EQ, they can be very stubborn, slow, right? Passive. I'm not going to tell you I have a problem with you. So it's really, we can look at this EQ stuff almost like good behavior, bad behavior sometimes too, because EQ isn't just a switch we turn on. So like if you're having a problem with an S type of employee, you're probably going to see some of those low EQ type of things popping up. True story. And the things you love about those S's are going to be that they're patient, they're stable, they're a rock in your company. I know Bill's always going to be here. He doesn't always hit that number, but I know I'm going to get the same thing out of Bill, right? So they're calm and methodical. They like to restate things to make sure that we're clear and I'm not going to misdeliver. They want status quo. Once status quo is established, the S's, they breathe a sigh of relief, which is hard for us entrepreneurs and visionaries, right? Because we're always, as soon as we attain something, it's like, all right, now how do we grow more? And the S is like, oh boy, we just grew. I thought this was where we dock and play safe for a minute, right? They want that stability of that nice little cove where the water's calm. That's where they want to dock their boat. Under stress, they become submissive, right? Dang it, I don't know how to deal with this. It's too much for me. I don't know how. What they really want is they don't want to let you down and they don't want to be a burden. They want to be easygoing. So just let them know they're coming through for you. You're going to get a lot of consistency from them. They're going to be long-term employees. They're employees that follow policy. They like it the same. They're steady. I think in painting companies and construction companies in general, you'll see a lot of technicians with S in their style. And project managers love S's because they know I can send Jim and Tim over on that job and it's going to come out the same all the time. The same meaning good, the same meaning bad, it's going to be the same, right? I don't know what their skill level is, but based on their behavior style, it's going to be the same. Cool? Questions? S's.
We may have one on the team. Pretty sure we do.
Nice. Everybody needs one.
I think we might need two.
You might. We'll see in a sec.
Yeah.
Other questions, comments, insults.
Looking at what you've shown so far with the DI and the S so far, the D and the S seem to be fairly opposite in some ways, right? I'm going to go back to my example from my first disc. I was actually a high D, high S. Those were my two high scores at that time. You see mine now. If you pull it up if we do that later, my S has dropped dramatically over the last years. How do you explain someone who would be a D, high S?
Yeah, it's an interesting profile, Mike. Just for a caveat, I've known Mike for a number of years in the painting world, and interesting. That's probably why I like you. I have a few friends with a DS profile, and it's not a common profile. It's not as common as others because they are opposites. I'll show you more about why they're opposites in a few minutes, but it comes down to it's this task-oriented extroverted trait, the D, and this people-oriented introverted trait of the S. So what I see from people with this style and some of my great friends, I think it's because I understand their odd style, right? When our style isn't common to other people, they misunderstand it, right? Mm-hmm. And it's also hard because we have a conflict inside. It's like, I want action now, but it has to go through the system. So there's almost an anxiety. And in those places, those people are like, you guys need to quit doing that or I'm going to fire you. And then they go home and they're like, the S kicks in. It's like, I should have handled that differently, So the D pops out and the S kind of says, ooh, maybe I should wait. And so they are a little bit of a conflict. And listen, it's not anything crazy. I've seen it a few times. It's just less common. Why did it go to this? I think that you felt at some point that in order to grow your business in that next stage, or you felt the pressure that you needed to be a more urgent person.
Yeah.
That's, my prediction based on, those two graphs. Yeah. I needed to be a high D with a low S, somebody who gets it done without asking how, right?
Yeah.
Or how we did it yesterday. And that's what you thought would be better than a moderate D with some S, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Helpful?
Yeah, very much.
Good. All right. High C's. Ready? C's is about being correct and cautious and calculating. It's about being perfect. The P and the C word are precision and compliance. It's about accuracy all the time. High C's are analytical, systematic, worrisome. Right? I told you I grew up with a 90 C. It's just everything has to be right. On the high end, you're going to get analysis paralysis. OCD. It has to be perfect. Low C's say, I don't know. There's a typo in the estimate. Send it anyway. That's what erasers are for, right? I'll talk to the customer. It'll all be fine. So anybody with a high C right now is cringing. Like, no, that's not how we do it. So here's some C's. I really like Questlove as one of the examples because he's a drummer. And I think it's a great example because I'm a drummer. But some drummers are timekeepers, right? Like a high C, precision. They're on it. They know what 61 beats per minute is. And they're just like hitting their groove like a timepiece. And then you have Tommy Lee, who also plays the drums, but he does it in a cage spinning with pyrotechnics and a lot of flair and flipping sticks because he's a high I. So we can all do the same kind of work. We're just going to do it with the style we bring. Cool. So here's some C with EQ. So I'm going to go low EQ first because we can be critical and fussy and picky, hard to please, right? But what we love about our high C's is they're detailed and careful. They keep us out of trouble. They make sure that all the systems are buttoned up and we did it perfectly, right? So their pace is also slower. It's meticulous and careful. I want to be exacting, right? I want to order the paint that you said I had to order. They need information. They like accuracy. Under stress, they become withdrawn. They have to go check their spreadsheets and say they don't like to admit that they were wrong on the high end because it's such an affront to them because their fears are criticism or mistakes. They dislike that very much. That's why they're a high C, so they don't make mistakes. Hey, listen, we all project our style onto other people. I think you should be like me, right? You should like details as much as I like details because I'm the ideal version of person, right? If there were a different ideal version of person, I would have become that. So I don't know why you're not like me. It's how we kind of go through life. So we need to take a second and be like, how is this person different?
So how does someone that doesn't care about the details, and is it if we say, I don't care how you do it, just do it, is that a problem for the high C? Do they go, well, is that like almost like an insult, like, well, how dare you not care about the details? Or is that a compliment to the, how does that work?
I think that, just, I don't care about the details, it depends on the relationship and how you say it, right? Like if you said, listen, the details, that's your jam and not mine. How can I help you get the details you need? That's a different way of saying, like, not my jam, handle it. Right. So
cool. Okay.
Honoring them and saying, listen, I don't care about the details as much as you. What do you need in order? Here's a good sales tactic for high C's. If you discover that you're dealing with a high C or an employee that's a high C, you don't want to like give them all the information in order for them to like sign off on the estimate, because they'll read all the information. You don't want to give them data sheets. They'll read it. It'll delay the decision for high C. They need to make sure that it's all right. So with those clients and with those employees, you ask them, what information do you need in order to make a great decision? And that will help them kind of like hone in and say, I need these 3 pieces of info. And then you give them those 3. Otherwise, they're going to search out all of it on the internet. Questions about C's? Low C's, they're just not detail oriented. They're like, listen, some low C's like the details. They don't want to have to do them. They don't show up as a detail person. I don't want to have to do that all my life and be in the dimly lit basement entering receipts and putting spreadsheets together. That's, I can do a spreadsheet and I love spreadsheets because it shows me numbers, but I'd rather have somebody else doing all that minutiae, right? Want to see your team? Say, yeah. All right. There you go. So what I did was I took all 4 of your disc graphs and I threw it on here together. Scott's in blue, Rick's in red. You can see there. Danielle, do you like Danielle or Danny?
Danny's fine.
Danny. All right, good. So some similarities, some differences there.
Sorry, either one.
Either one. Thank you. Let's look at let's look at Scott or let's look at the D quadrant in general. Of course, Mike has a higher D. 90 what, Mike? You're almost getting extra credit there. And then we have some other. Mike's going to say, this is what has to be done. Here's what's going on. Any questions? I've got other fires to put out, right? It's like,
Yep.
High D's, if they don't have problems and challenges, they create others, right? It's like, we're out. Okay, good. Finally. And I've got a list in my back pocket. So also it's like, I'm going to give you my time. I'm going to give you the best of it. I'm going to hit like massive results. And then I got to bounce because I've got these other things, tick tock, tick tock. Whereas some of these lower D's are going to be like more non-confrontational. They'll tell you what needs to be said. They might let you take the lead or talk a little bit more about the story. Okay. They're going to listen a little bit more. Danny, you might have a hard time telling Mike that he is, hey, you're going too fast for me, sir. Right. In this instance here, wherever there's that difference, it's like Mike likes it really fast. And Mike's going to say, hey, you guys are a little bit slower than I like. Right. This meeting is going a little slower than I want. Sorry.
As Scott laughs.
Yeah. So look for differences. Also, when you bring on other team members, know who wants to go fast, who's a D and who's like, I'll let you lead a little bit. Right. I'll think about that and I'll send you an email about your thoughts tomorrow. Might be. Okay. When you score in this moderate area, Rick, in that 40 to 60 area, it means, hey, I can go either way. I'll take the lead when I need to. I don't have to all the time. Mike's going to say, if I have something to say, you're going to hear. Yep. And then the eyes. Look at this. Look at this exciting, engaging team. They're like, hey, this is going to be fun. We're kicking butt. What a fun meeting this is, Art. We'll spend 90 minutes here as long as you keep smiling and keep the energy up, right? And
Mike's
Mike's
already looking
cringing.
at his watch and he's like, oh, I got to go.
That's right.
I was just going to say, I'm staring at the clock going, when does this meeting end?
Yes. And you can see it there, right? It doesn't matter how fun this is. As long as the information is direct and Mike's getting like bang, 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 and it suits his motivators, which we'll talk about soon, then he's going to love it. Whereas the other people showed up and they're having a blast. Yeah, this is good stuff. This will be fun. This is interpersonal stuff I can use probably, right? The S's, here we have Danny. You're doing some of that follow through that the team needs, but look, you have a team that does follow through. Nobody's like super low. You don't have like firefighter urgency. Mike, your S is climbing up where you're not just going to be haphazard, right? I mean, it's in a place where it's moderate. In the toilet, I see this with a lot of salespeople when it's super, super low. It's very versatile. We stereotypically, we look for that high D, high I with that low S, low C. And how do I get you in the leather package today? And I'm not going to put this info in the CRM, so you have a little bit more of that follow through than they would stereotypically. And the C's, listen, your team is like, hey, details are cool. That's fine. We'll do the details we need to, but it's not going to be like an overly detailed process. You're not going to have like a bunch of checklists and homework for your clients to like fill out and do that kind of stuff. That's just not what you think effective consulting is. It's get in there, do the people stuff, right? Hit the results, do the people stuff, and do the follow through. If we're a little bit off, a little bit wrong, as long as we're getting the results, we'll make it, right? Does that sound fair for your team? Awesome. Let's take these into their own. Let's just look at Scott by himself. He's got this I. I'm looking at the blue ones. I, S with some C and D. The I and the S is warm and engaging, right? I want to talk to you and I'm going to follow through. I'm going to talk to you and I'm going to do the things I said. Hey, if you don't like my stuff, you don't like my stuff. I don't like, that you don't like me about it, but, I'm not going to push you into using my stuff. I mean, there's no point in it. It's good stuff. You're going to use it or you're not. Mike's like, if you don't use this, you're nuts. How much more of my time are you going to waste? Right? Is that okay, guys? Am I doing all right? All right. Let me know if I go too far. Then we got Rick. Rick, similar style, right? Look how similar to Scott. You guys are besties. You guys know how to get along with each other, right? It's easy going. It's talkative. The only issue you guys might have is like, who's going to talk more than the other, right? When do I get to my chance? I wish you were unmuted for that laugh, Rick. That was
Rick, unmute for a second or unmute permanently. So this is interesting because I would, in my perception is, I would think of Rick like, hey, don't waste Rick's time. He's a busy guy. Don't wait. To me, I would think of him as a higher D personally. And maybe I'm just reading into that because of my I, or maybe his moderate D. I don't know.
Oh, it's possible.
I think my D has come down. I need to look when Art did this a few years back for us and see if my D has come down, because I think it has.
Yeah. Yeah. And, we're all getting of that age of where you start having that middle life kind of questioning of things, right? So,
well, yeah, or you get through it and you get to the age where you really don't need to be the one saying how much you know. You're just there if somebody asks you.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. I always, Scott.
The wise man. Yeah.
It's interesting about the D and what we assume about it, because I've always seen Rick in the rooms that I'm in as a bigger statured guy with confidence, and I don't know, that just seemed I don't want to say intimidating, but kind of in that realm of feelings, but just respectable and that kind of thing. And I don't know if I want to correlate that to the D, because he's never been really short with his time with me. He's always wanted to talk to me, and he's always been upbeat about it too. Like, yeah, you're going to make this, or, hey, here's an idea for you. Right. So I always get that out of him, and it never felt pushy or there wasn't enough time. So I guess I have a little benefit in this team meeting to know some of you, but
Sure.
Follow-up question. Anything about that, Rick?
Poor Mike, man. You need another Scott, Mike. And Danny, y'all didn't need another Scott on your team. You probably needed somebody different.
How about that? Maybe.
I'll probably get let go after this.
We're talking about that. I'll talk him off the ledge, Rick.
No, you could stay as long as you like me.
As long as you like it. That's right. Tell him how nice he is. So, Mike, that D with the C and the lower IS, this is really, it's an integrator's profile. Whenever I do this for like other companies and they say, hey, let's create a benchmark. I need to hire an integrator. And then they blindly go take an assessment and answer, how would the ideal integrator answer these questions? It always comes back with the DC profile and a little bit more extreme than yours. So the DC profile is one that says, get it done now and get it done right. Right. And with that lower IS, you're going to get a kind of a cooler read, a cooler affect with that. Right.
Yeah.
Not that you don't care. It's just that's just your style of approaching it. But some people are going to misread it because they don't see that smile come through with that lower I.
Yeah.
So practice that. I think that's an easy practice you can do that will win you all kinds of relationships that you don't even, it'll open doors that you'll just think are silly because you smiled. Yep. And
just tell him to practice caring.
No, just practice smiling. Just I'm not going
Smiling
to
is a lot easier than caring.
Okay,
yeah.
Good. Yeah, because I was going to say, don't get crazy here.
Hitler smiled. So, yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, he just said that.
I crossed it, didn't I? Too soon? Sorry, guys. But seriously, it's a get it done now, get it done right. It doesn't have to, caring and your skills that you deliver that with, your EQ will play a part in that. But get it done now, get it done right kind of profile. Also, just a side note, whenever I'm looking for a DC profile as a production manager, they're great there, like an ops, my operational manager, that integrator. I always like the D to be slightly higher than the C. They can be super high, moderate, but I want that D to trump that C. Because if the C trumps the D, the C will take a little bit too long to get things done. Where if the D is a little bit higher than the C, that D will push that analysis paralysis over the edge. Does that make sense? I hope that's applicable too. So watch for that. Watch for that. Because you'll find DC profiles and say, I need that person. But if Mike's profile, if his C were higher than his D, he might wait a little bit too long to get things done. But he gets things done. He gets it done well. And then you have Danielle, similar profile to Scott and Rick, but a little bit flipped where the S is higher than the I, but not nominally, marginally, right? But brings in some more of those details that Mike likes too. So good follow through, good processes Danny has, good calendaring, right? Trying to do air traffic control, this plane lands, then we send this email. Those are great things. Danny, you're at your best when you know what's expected and you know how to do it. And that's when you're magic, right?
That's for sure. It's funny how it's changed some. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. And make sure that she has some time on calls with clients so that she gets to interact with other people. Not in like salesy confrontational ways or like problem solving, like they're having troubles, but just check in. I think Danny would get some benefit of like doing the client check-in or what is it? Those would you refer us kind of, what do you like about us? Those kinds of things. Here's another way to look at the same kind of thing. We're just seeing in this wheel that the D's are in the red, the I's are in the yellow, S is in green, and the blue is the C. And you can kind of see where do people kind of fall on this wheel. And the farther you score from each other, the more difficult it is to breach that gap because there's, differences, more differences. But what's most important, it's not about who you are, it's what you do with who you are. So you can be a high D, just be a cool high D, bolt some skills on and don't run over people. Be direct, kindly, right? You can be a high I and be fun loving. And then also say, we're off track. Let's also set another time to do this. We don't have to have a 4-hour lunch with margaritas, So you guys want some really cool stuff? Say, oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to teach you how to identify others really quickly. You can do this by watching somebody's pace. You can watch them talk. I've had clients who will go to the mall and we'll just sit and we'll just watch people walk and kind of point out their style. I haven't assessed all of them, but it's pretty easy. I just ask 2 questions. Am I talking to an introvert or an extrovert? And are they people-oriented or task-oriented? So just for clarification, an extrovert, they get their energy being with other people, and an introvert likes to go home and kind of recharge. So, and people are task. Are they talking about community, togetherness? What are we going to do? I had friends over. Or are they talking about tasks like get it done, fix it, problem solving? So it kind of looks like this. Extroverted traits are the D and the I, and the introverted traits are the S and the C. And the people-oriented traits are the I and the S, and the task-oriented traits are the D and the C. So in order to funnel people down, those are the 2 questions. Let's just find someone we might all know. Politicians are tricky because, they kind of jump around and try to fool us. So are actors. So if you choose an actor, we'll choose a role. But how about Forrest Gump as an actor? Not Tom Hanks, but Forrest Gump. Was he an extrovert or an introvert, do you think? There's no right.
Introvert.
I agree. I think so. And so we know he's an S or a C. Was he people-oriented, like friendly and wanted to make friends, or was he task-oriented? He wanted to fix the world's problems and stuff.
I think people.
I would agree with you. So what they have in common, he was really big into Saving Bubba and Lieutenant Dan, and boy, he sure loved his girl. So what they have in common is an S. So we learn some things about the S. If I identify that I'm talking to an S, I'm going to kind of slow down my pace. Ask them if you're comfortable. Am I going too fast? Are you okay? Let them talk. Pause longer. Right? So fun. All right. How about let's do a couple presidents, regardless of politics. Donald Trump, introvert or extrovert?
Extrovert.
Good job, guys. People-oriented or task-oriented? People-oriented. I'm going to build the wall because I like community. We should all get along. I'm going to build the wall because it's something we need to do. It's a job to get done. It's a task. Rick, you said people. Did I convince you otherwise?
I guess I thought of it differently. I mean, I can't see him doing things. I see him getting energy from just talking to people and being, that extrovert kind of thing. I don't see him actually being task or I don't know. I guess I just look at it differently, maybe.
Well, maybe we'll talk more about like what that task orientation looks like. But how about this?
I guess he was task and agenda oriented. He just had other people doing it. So I got to think about it differently.
Yeah, there you go. And how would he get other people to do it? Would he do it with a high I style? Like, hey, buddy, how can I talk to you?
No, he would do it with a high D style.
There you go. Good job, brother. So we think that those 2 things, he's a high D.
Yeah.
So if I'm talking to Mr. Trump, and remember the fear of the high D is losing control or being taken advantage of, and you as coaches, you're going to deal with a lot of high D business owners. So if Mr. Trump said to me, I want to buy a plane, it's got to be under 3 million. It has to have 15 seats and gold wheels. It has to say Trump on the side. I need it by March. I can't go back to him and say, this is what I got. This is what you're going to pay. And where's the check? I got to go back and say, Mr. Trump, you said you wanted this and that and this, and I can get it by March 16th. Do you want me to start? Because if I said I'm going to get started, he would cancel the deal because I stepped on his fear of losing control. But if I said, hey, I can do that, this and that, not that other thing, do you want me to? He's going to love that. And then he's going to say, yeah, and get bigger tires just because I'm a high D and I want that too. Right. So you can play that game with more and more people. And I'd love nothing else than all of my clients to have one of these two kind of printed out and, next to their phone or their computer, so that your dashboard, whatever it is. So when you're talking to somebody, you can be like, oh yeah. I'm talking to an extroverted, people-oriented person. Cool. I'm going to make this more fun. Right. I'm going to ask them how their kids were, what they're excited about. What are you doing this weekend? If I'm talking to that person in that quadrant. Hey, go ahead, Mike.
The question. Okay. So for someone, I think of myself, right? And I see I'm a high D, high C, with my D being the dominant trait. So looking at this chart, I would think that it's saying I'm more extroverted, but I think of myself as more introverted. Like, I know how to be outgoing, but you talked about like where you get your energy from. And I find myself having to come home, quiet room, re-energize. I get drained when I'm around. I like being around a lot of people, but it takes a lot of energy out of me. I'm a high D.
Yeah. So think about this. We talk about extrovert and introvert. What we do know is both D and C are on the upper end of this wheel here. So both are task-oriented traits, right? So you're getting it done. Yeah. You have checklists.
Yes.
And you are not totally extrovert or introvert. You're actually what we would call an ambivert. You're both. So like ambidextrous. And those are the kinds of people sometimes are confused. It's like, hey, I like going out, but you know what? I sometimes like just leave me alone. I like to like just ghost and, So I see that a lot, at conferences, some of my favorite friends are like, man, this is cool. Went to the classes. I'm going back to my room. I'll see you at dinner. Right.
Yeah. Yep.
Is that you, Mike?
That is me. Very much.
Go. And that's what, you can kind of see it on that graph. I like both. I'm going to go out and crush it at dinner and then leave me.
Yeah.
Great. Good stuff, guys. When you talk, it makes it richer. So here's some cool stuff. Scott likes this one. How about natural compatibility? You don't have to memorize this. I'll send you the slides and some tip sheets, but this is how do the different styles relate with each other? If we were just to find their pure style, remember, we all have all of it. But 2Ds, they get along pretty well, right? It's like, I don't like your idea. No, your idea is stupid. I like this part of it. No, that's dumb. Okay, you want to do that? Cool, we do that. Let's go get ice cream. And every S in the room is like, what just happened here? These two were like at each other's throats. And the Ds are like, no, we were just working it out D way, Look at these eyes. Don't let them go to lunch together. They're never coming back. Right? Yeah. They're going to have fun, order a second drink, right? Appetizers, maybe go hit Top Golf on the way. Ds and Cs, a little trick there. Task oriented. Oh, look, Mike, you have that internal conflict of the D and the C. I want it done now, but it has to be perfect too, right? A little bit of that. How do you get something done perfectly now? Perfecting takes time. So we all sometimes have that little bit of that. I have these traits and these traits, and they rub me. The I and the C has the most fun example. Look, I don't know if you can be farther apart. I don't know which one of these is farther apart, but think about it in terms of what we talked about. The I being the extroverted people and the C being introverted task. And to me, the high I, I can see the high I call the C and just say, hey, we're going out tonight. Are you coming? We're leaving in 2 hours. And the C is like, where are we going? What time? Where do we have to be? Are we going to have fun? How much fun are we going to have? How will we know we had the fun? When will the fun be over? And the high I is like, this is no fun at all. I'm calling somebody else. Right. So I exaggerate, but that's how they get along. Your team behaviorally has some really cool chops in it, doesn't it? You guys are all warm and engaging folks. Some of you inspirational, right? Moderately with a push. Mike's got that real strong push on it. Danny's going to handle some of that admin stuff and keep you guys in line. Looks like a good match so far. We're going to talk about motivators in the next kind of section, but let's do some Q&A first. Maybe a 5-10 minute break. Questions, answers, compliments, insults.
So far, so good. I want to see the motivators.
I have one about.
Oh, go ahead, Danny.
Oh, I was going to say, I have one about like introvert, extrovert. What if, so going back to that slide where it had me mainly as an introvert, but it's interesting where depending on who I'm with, I get more energy with people. Does that make sense? Like if it's a specific group of people, then I'll get a lot more energy with them, or I'd rather regroup with them than by myself. But if it's with people that I don't know, then I can definitely see myself as an introvert. Do they clash with one another, or is that pretty common?
I stopped sharing my screen. Let me reshare that real quick because I wanted to pull up that graph that you were talking about, I think. Is that the one? The answer is yes. It's really important because when you're with people that communicate the way you like to communicate, it's so much easier to take our fingers out of the ears, right? With that monkey analogy, so that they listen. I enjoy communicating with people who communicate at my pace, right? People who are too detailed and want to like call me out that it was 18% instead of 17% of IDs, that it grows tiresome for me because I'm a low C, right? So if I don't manage myself and say, hey, they're a high C and high Cs are needed, and especially for me to call me out, right? I hope, did that answer your question a little bit? It's more like, do I get along with this person naturally, or am I going to have a hard time? Do my wheels overlap with those people, I guess?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Do my wheels overlap? Yeah. It's going to be easier to have conversation where your wheels overlap. So IS folks with a lower D, somebody who's not too pushy for you, Danny, who's warm and engaging, who's going to come through and kind of be nurturing. And S's I sometimes think of as kind of motherly. They kind of come through. It's like, hey, come on over. Take off your shoes, have pizza, you and me. It's an introverted people trait, right? It's not like on stage extroverted people trait. Okay.
Yeah.
Others. Rick, give me something. Give me your hardest question.
I can't think of one, honestly.
Then you're a master. We did it.
Yeah,
it's good stuff.
Touchdown.
It's just having the repetition to be able to think it through in your mind. Like you can just spit it out. Whereas I'm looking at someone and they're really just irritating the crap out of me. And I'm like, I wonder why are they here? Taking that time. That's the hard thing.
Great. Rick, I like that you said that because it is repetition. And that's why that's why I always send the tip sheets. I just want somebody to print it and keep it next to them, because awareness is the first step to any self-development. And being aware that I need to learn that, or just recognize it. Just recognizing it in a person, like if you're going on an estimate or you're going to talk to a client today, just ask yourself those two questions, and on their folder or in your Outlook contact, put, I think they're a D. Primary D, so that'll just remind you, but it'll also help you give the practice. And here's another thing that I find is that when we do this as a team, we now know the language. It's like, oh, I was talking to client X and, total S, right? So let's go slower with them. That's what they need from us, right? They don't need our fast paced program. They need Rick for this one, not Mike for this one. Or, boy, this guy's really going to drive us hard. We need to make sure Mike's in there to make sure that he pushes back and, and it helps to drive as fast as they want to.